In the interests of transparency and honest debate, I think it's only right that I step off the ledge and reveal exactly what I think about the EU. I know that this is divisive. In fact, if we're to believe everything we're told by the media, those who voted to leave are now either dead, senile, or they've gone to get themselves an education. On the other hand, those of you who voted to stay are being represented by this guy.
Even if we just take 2016 voters on their own, Brexit has died. Because if you extrapolate from that maths, there are only 14.26 million Leave voters left alive compared to 15.09 million Remain voters. So even if we pretend that the wishes and needs of people in 2023 don't matter, and all that matters is how people voted in 2016, that majority is dead. We are facing additional poverty because of the wishes of dead people.
I think that video speaks for itself. It's probably the most immoral video I've seen throughout the whole Brexit saga, but there you go. Now, as far as my opinion of the EU is concerned, I have no respect for the EU as an institution, as an experiment whatsoever. I consider it to be a dishonest, insidious, calculating, arrogant, authoritarian experiment that has already failed, and the only way that it feeds itself is by preying on yet more nations. Now that its back is against the wall with Germany in recession, they are calling for more countries to join. They remind me of the old empire building where the empire of the day, whichever one it may be, needed to expand in order to have more booty to plunder from new countries, and this is exactly what I believe the EU is doing. I believe it answers to nobody. It has tied up the entire European Union, the nations, the member nations, in red tape, and it has enforced so much interdependency that these nations can't even move. So much so that the EU can't grow anymore because it can't even make any trade deals, because it only needs one of the countries to object and the deal is off. For example, the Mercosur trade pact. We've been trying to sign up with them for years, but every time it's blocked at the last minute by France, who wants to protect its own industry. In their defence, why shouldn't they? But why should we not be able to have a trade deal to guarantee cheaper food, cheaper oil, whatever it may be, because France doesn't want its own market to be affected? This is the problem with the EU, and this is why it will invariably fail. Germany, the bastion of Vorsprung Dork net zero, as winter closes, is going to be running around igniting more coal-fired power stations than it has done for years, because these arrogant know-it-alls, when they were told by a president who nobody likes that they were making a grave mistake becoming dependent on Russian gas, they laughed. But to quote another smart man, they're not laughing now, are they? Because this winter Germany is going to be kicking out more crap into our atmosphere than it has done for years through its own arrogance. But there was an element of calculated planning that went wrong, because it is my opinion that the EU were hoping that the war in Ukraine and the sanctions against Russia would give them the opportunity to manipulate their way into being in control of Russian oil and gas. But unfortunately, it didn't work that way. Hence the reason that when the war first started, Germany's contribution to Ukrainian defence was to send 500 helmets. I think that the EU will fall apart. It is inevitable, because it cannot move anymore. It is tied up in knots. All we have to consider is that back just in 1970, the EU in its current size plus the UK represented 35% of global GDP. 35%. That's when the US was only 24%. By 2022, last year, without the UK, that had dropped to 16.5%. It was projected to be 15.5% this year, and with Germany plunging into recession, that is being revised down to below 15%. And on its current trajectory, by the end of this decade, the EU will represent less than 10% of global GDP. Who, in their right mind, would want to be confined to a dying, corrupt, authoritarian regime? But that's not the real reason that I have issues with the EU, or rather not just the only reasons. Let's go back to the exchange rate mechanism, 1989. Later that year, the fall of the Berlin Wall, Germany went bankrupt through the cost of reunification. Then we had Black Wednesday, which cost this country billions because we were tied in to the ERM. You'd have thought that would have opened people's eyes, but it didn't. And people like Soros made billions on the back of misery in this country. And following Black Wednesday, Norman Lamont decided to pull us out of the ERM. 2 years later, 95, Germany championed the entry of Turkey as a trading partner with the EU, meaning that Turkey could manufacture goods outside of the EU without any restrictions, without any health and safety, none of the obligations of the EU countries, but those goods could be imported into the EU without tariff, because Germany decided to outsource a lot of its manufacturing to its old friends. Let's not forget that Turkey, as the Ottomans sided with the Germans and the Austro-Hungarians in World War I, they remained neutral in World War II, and Germany has the largest Turkish population outside of Turkey itself. So Germany decided to outsource everything to its old friends and make its old friend an associate member. What that did mean, though, is that then, because Turkey had the advantage, it then slowly undercut all of the textile industries across southern Europe: Portugal, Spain, Italy, Greece, Cyprus. Within 5 years, all of their textile industry, give or take, had gone. And that's just one part of their industry. They have had their economies ravaged in a way that they have never recovered. The next step, in 1998, when Germany entered the euro, which was a digital currency for just 3 years before it was introduced as a physical currency, Germany entered approximately 10 to 15% undervalued. The Deutschmark went in 10 or 15% lower. This gave Germany a competitive advantage over its neighbours. Basically, Germany, the instigator of the euro, shafted its neighbours, set its exchange rate in stone at a lower rate to give itself a competitive advantage, and then because the others were buying more from Germany than they were selling, they made up the shortfall by borrowing from Germany. The Deutsche Bank stepped in and began to lend to Germany's neighbours. Fast forward 5 or 10 years, it's Portugal, Spain, Greece, countries around Italy, countries around Germany were all in serious debt to the Deutsche Bank. The Deutsche Bank then, once it plunged countries such as Greece into such extreme debt, and it was worried that it might lose some of its money, it sold off a lot of those bonds. And once it had sold off a lot of them, it then devalued them, and the people who bought them got wiped out, which were other smaller countries. I'll go into that in another video. Who in their right mind would want these people to make decisions about our country? Thank you very much. Bye bye for now. See you next time. Bye.